Coming up on the NBA Daily, Josh Giddey and the Bulls stun the Lakers. OKC and Cleveland survive some tough opponents, and we break down why the NBA experiences some March Badness. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Law. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Zena.
Of course. Now, before we get started, for folks listening, I got a favor to ask. We want to hear from you. We're actually asking you to fill out a quick survey because we want to hear a little bit about you and your podcast habits. So go over to theathletic.com/athletic/survey25. 3 lucky entries will win $100, £100, depending on where you are, voucher for Amazon. So definitely go figure it out so you can get some money for Amazon. So whether you're a longtime listener or a new time follower, we want your feedback. Again, theathletic.com/survey25. All of these details will be in the show notes, but we thank you in advance. Okay. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into last night's action, Law, because it was a fun night of basketball. And we're going to play a little game called By the Numbers. Okay. And the first number I want to give to you, Law, is the number 9. Okay. That number, take a wild guess as to what it is.
It would only be a lot of points if it was in a small amount of time.
Correct. That is how many points the Lakers allowed Chicago to get in the final 12 and a half seconds of the craziest ending of an NBA game I've seen in a long, long time. The Lakers were up 115-110 when Chicago had an out-of-bounds play that ended in a swing to Patrick Williams, who hits a corner 3. Now the score, Lakers up 115-113. LeBron takes the ball out of bounds on the baseline. Josh Giddey steals it on the inbound pass, quickly tosses it to Kobe White on the wing for another 3. Now Chicago is up 116-115. After a timeout, Luka inbounds the ball from the sideline to Austin Reeves, who drives it in on a bum ankle, by the way, for a quick 2 at the basket. That was 2 of 30 points for the night from Reeves. Lakers up 117-116, and then Giddey, with the Bulls having no timeouts left, takes it out of bounds, inbounds it to Williams, who gives it right back to him. Giddey takes one dribble, gathers before the half-court line, and heaves it at the buzzer. Swish. Bulls win it 119-117. Law. Giddey particularly, the Bulls in general have been phenomenal, 9 of 11, but Giddey particularly has been on a tear lately, and the Lakers have been on the brunt end of it. What is going on?
This dude is just compiling all the numbers. I mean, the triple-double last night, the triple-double Saturday. So the Lakers didn't come into last night's game unaware of Josh Giddey's performance and, most importantly, confidence level. I mean, he had 8 steals Saturday, and he didn't get his second steal until that LeBron inbounds pass that led to Kobe White's 3.
Wow. That's insane how much he's been playing with confidence. I could have had the number 2 be the game in terms of the amount of triple doubles that Giddey has had against the Lakers, the amount of games that the Bulls have had against the Lakers in the month of March. But here we are, 9 in 12 and a half seconds. Let's go to the next number. Okay. The next number is 106. 106. Think about what that could be. What could that be, Law?
I feel like it's something involving BET. It's the only time I think 106.
Okay, that's true. 106 apart. In this case, it is how many field goal attempts the Spurs attempted in last night's goal to beat the top team in the East, the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is a season high for the Spurs, and they almost did it. They were within 3 points of the Cavs with 141 remaining, and the Cavs showed at the end of the game, while they're number 1 in the clutch, Darius Garland put up 2 threes, Jarrett Allen hit 2 free throws, and they ultimately got the separation, winning 124-116. But the way the Spurs showed up, I mean, rookie Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, 22 points apiece, and they didn't have Wemby. Like, let's remember, this is Wemby-less Spurs. Of course, Cleveland also did not have Evan Mobley. And they needed Jarrett Allen to put up 29 points and 16 rebounds, his season high, 29 points, and 19 points in the fourth quarter. And then Donovan Mitchell had to put up 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 14 assists, which is a career high. These are crazy numbers that the Cleveland Cavs had to put up against the Spurs, who are not even in the play-in law. Okay. Yeah. How did they stay in this game, and what does it reveal about Cleveland?
Well, I'll just say that this is your standard Cleveland game. When you look at their offense, when you look at what they average for the season, you look at that and you look at nothing else and you think, well, they did what they needed to do. I think the Spurs, they gave themselves a chance. And the way you have to play, and we're going to see this in the playoffs, spoiler alert, I hope to have something on this sometime in the spring. The possession battle matters. So you're going to see a Spurs team that had 19 offensive rebounds. That is a weakness for the Cavs. Even with Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen both being available, obviously Evan wasn't available. Dean Wade's a pretty good guy to have playing, but you playing Tristan Thompson enough minutes to get ejected, that's probably going to be a commentary on your lack of depth. That's something that we're going to have to look at for Cleveland going into the playoffs. But the Spurs had the possession battle advantage. They shot 40.6% from the field. So that speaks to some of the offensive rebounds. A lot of them were available. They were bricking. Castle did have 22, but he missed 14 of 23 shots. I think he'd like to be more efficient than that. He missed 4 out of 6 free throws. That kind of hurts when a game gets to be the way it went last night. The Spurs, they took care of the basketball. I will give Chris Paul a shout out. That dude is 40 years old this year and has not missed a game yet. I'm not going to be the one to jinx it. I really hope he gets to 82.
There you go. Don't give him the NBA daily curse. Come on, okay? Got to be careful with that. All right, let's keep it moving to the next number. The number is 46, Law, and this is how many times Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has reached 30-plus points this season, including in last night's win over Memphis, 125-104. He had 37 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and he made no threes. OKC officially set the franchise record wins at 61, but 125-104, folks, don't let that score confuse you. Okay. This was a tight game. The Grizzlies and Thunder were literally tied at 99 with 7 minutes remaining in the fourth. And Ja Morant was on the bench. This is his 5th straight game with a left hamstring strain. So this is the time of the year where they really need him. Ultimately in this game, Law, OKC's defense, their rebounding, their scoring ability, won out. You could see that. You could see why they're also a clutch team, similar to the Cavs. But Memphis had a great showing. I'm thinking about Scottie Pippen. He almost had a triple-double, 17 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists. But Memphis's offense struggled late in the fourth, and I cannot think of a better player that could have helped them than Ja Morant. How much do you think he could have impacted the outcome of this game had he played?
He might have impacted it somewhat. The Grizzlies are used to playing without him. They've had better performances, but it's, again, just like what we were talking about with Spurs, Cavs, I'm going to look at the Thunder. It's like they gave up 104. Sounds like a Thunder game to me. And the Thunder got their guys back. It's not just, Shai getting buckets, recovering from one of his worst games of the season when they beat the Clippers Sunday. I mean, the fact that they're finally whole again, Jalen Williams playing for the first time in a long time, that lineup with those two bigs together, Hartenstein and Holmgren, I think that is significant. And so I think when you look at it, the OKC Thunder, they're just that team. They're the hottest team in the league again, 8 straight. The Grizzlies, this would have been a nice win for them. But I think, again, we go into the playoffs. I think what's going to be critical for them is their offense thrives in the flow of the game. They're fast-paced. They don't run a lot of stuff. They will catch you napping, but I think if a team is focused and what happens in fourth quarter, you approximate playoff basketball because there's no, I don't feel like playing D right now.
Right.
It's like, no, it's winning time. And I know OKC can defend. I don't know if the Grizzlies, when it matters the most, are going to be able to come up with performance whether Ja's playing or not.
And that's going to be huge, especially with the Grizzlies and the Lakers right now trying to battle in that 3rd, 4th, 5th spot.
Big game Saturday.
Big game Saturday. Exactly. All right. My last number to close this out quickly. The Pacers scored 162 points on the Washington Wizards. Yeah, correct. Damn.
We could have had one for the night before Indiana. Shoot.
Right. There you go. It's a franchise record. for the Pacers in terms of points allowed, and it's a franchise record for the Wizards in terms, of points scored, and it's a Wizards record for points allowed. They lost 109-162. Halliburton was the person that poured it in, 29 points in the month of March. He is 0.3 of percentage points away on his 3-point percentage from shooting 50, 40, 90 while averaging 20 points a game and dishing out 14 assists. Law, this is what we would call one of those bad games in March, where teams that don't have much going for them other than potentially draft positioning clearly look like it. But for the Pacers, this is potentially something that could impact, their home court advantage in the playoffs. Like, why was this statement when needed, of course, other than trying to make up for the night before?
For Indiana, that's all it is for me. Like, great job. Y'all scored more points than anybody this season. You alluded to this time of the year, March. This is the first game all March. We're into Friday is the 28th. It's the first time that someone has won by 50 points in the month of March. So I just feel like for both teams, it was a reaction to their last game. Indiana should have been able to secure a win. They didn't get the stop they needed at the buzzer. For Washington, they won a game, and it was like, nah, there's too many wins. we have to reestablish. Y'all don't get more losses by losing by 50. Just so y'all know, Washington. It only counts as one loss.
It doesn't get split up. Now, we at the NBA Daily, we know that all the games aren't created equal, and last night had a lot of great games, but we've seen a lot of bad games in March. We've seen a lot of players resting. We've seen a lot of no calls on out of bounds plays. We've seen a lot of weird things happening in the month of March. And after this break, we're going to break down why that is. Don't go anywhere. All right, joining me now, I have Eric Koreen, writer at The Athletic, after he wrote a story with a headline that definitely stood out. March Badness. This month shows the worst of the NBA, but would the league ever change that? It was a wonderful read, Eric, and I'm so happy that we're here with you to break it all down because lots of folks have thoughts on March being the worst of NBA action. And some folks think you could say that about a ton of months throughout the year. But I want to get your thoughts first and foremost. When did you first notice that March was a particularly bad month in NBA action?
It's been a few years now. I couldn't give you like an exact season or an exact date, but I think like sort of in the online NBA consciousness, vaguely there has been this acknowledgement that really the worst of what the league has to offer can be seen in March, whether it's the teams who, were never going to be good in the first place, the teams who, through a series of unfortunate events, have accepted that they're never going to be good and will, lightly or heavily rest some stars. And then the teams who are doing great, but that are like, well, what's the point of playing these guys every night? We're not going to win if, star A, B, or C isn't available. So, and even if you're fighting for seeding in some cases, especially with the more experienced teams, you have to weigh it and be like, do we really feel strongly that Game 7 in our home building is more important? Or is it more important that to use a team randomly, that LeBron James and Luka Doncic are healthy? I'm not saying the Lakers have done that at all, but like teams understandably have to feel that way. But when you get to March and things are a bit more settled and the options for your season are either completely defined or more defined, it really encourages teams to take their foot off the gas pedal to some degree.
You talked to Garrett Temple of the Raptors, and he called this system, and in referring to the system of the draft and the draft lottery, BS. And, he's a veteran. He's the Players Union VP, and he still can't stomach what March has become in the sense of what people are actively rooting for their teams to lose or not having players be competitive and wanting to win so that they can fit into this system well in the draft lottery. Like, what did that quote, and talking to Garrett and also talking to anyone else about what March has become, tell you about how the players connect to March and how they see March if they're on one of these teams?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I think the year before, so Andrew Wiggins' year at Kansas, his 1 year at college, this was right before the Raptors went on their surprise run that season. They sort of started the season poorly, traded Rudy Gay. It was looking like a full teardown. And then they miraculously got good 5 years later, won a championship. But before all that happened, going into that year, people thought the Raptors were going to be pretty bad. They could see a Rudy Gay trade coming. They could see maybe a DeMar DeRozan trade coming. They could see, who am I missing there? A Kyle Lowry trade maybe coming.
Yes, yep.
So just basically a complete teardown. Masai Ujiri was new to the Raptors at that point. And in the walk-up to that season, there were coaches and players asked, how do you react to people talking about tanking? And like at that point, it was even less discussed than it is, certainly less discussed than it was now. But the players were all sort of uniform, like, we don't think about this. This is not our job. And back then it might have been a bit blunter, even blunter than than saying the whole system is BS, but it's just more like is a foreign concept. It's like, we're trying to win. Stop bringing this up. It's kind of insulting. And I think that's where the reaction comes from. And Garrett Temple, he's a guy I've written a feature about. I know pretty well, as far as any of us can ever know any players well, which is, limited. But that's a different podcast, I think, where we explore my own insecurities. It's not that he doesn't blame the fans. In fact, his experience, his knowledge of the league's Players Association, his knowledge of the CBA makes it so he exactly understands where they're coming from. Right. But he knows how much his younger teammates are putting into that game, each individual game. And so to him, the fact that fans are forced to go into a game thinking, what's best for my team tonight, winning or losing? To him, that's what is BS. And I don't think most are as angry about it, but like especially the veterans I spoke to, and I mostly limited it to talking about veterans, because I figured they would have the most context. Like, they understand it, but they don't like it. And none of that is surprising.
Yeah, no, that makes me think of the conversation that Cam Johnson had with Sue Bird on, I think, the young man in the three. I think it was still the young man at the three at that point, not the old man in the three, because JJ Redick has now left. But Cam Johnson had this conversation with her about tanking and how uncomfortable it is in the locker room. It's like, we're competitors. Like, we don't want to lose. Like, that's not what's going on here. And at the same time that you understand the process of a rebuild. And that is also, there's such a disconnect, I think, from the locker room and these players being competitive pro athletes, and then the fans being like, we want to cheer you on and root for you, but we also want a bright future for this team. So let's dive in a little bit into the fans aspect real quick, because if I'm a fan and I'm spending on average $200 a ticket, and I'm expecting a certain product out on the floor, and then I get there, especially in March, and there are players sitting, and the product is not necessarily as good as it could have been. There are still tough players, playing hard out there, but it's just not what I expected. Do you think that the NBA is going to do anything about this in terms of making an environment in which fans don't feel as if their product has fallen off in March because people are gearing up for the playoffs or they're gearing up for the draft?
The league thinks they have improved things, and I think that's right. In fact, like I do think that's right. There are, by flattening the odds, which they did in 2019, by adding the play-in, even though the play-in's not perfect. We remember the Mavs in 2022, 2023. I can't. My years are all mixed up. Sort of bowing out of the 10th place race.
Sure.
The Raptors, if
2023. Because that's how they ended up getting Derek Lively the second.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Raptors, this year, if they really wanted, didn't need to rest Emmanuel quickly and Jakob Poeltl and could have chased the Chicago Bulls and now the Miami Heat, who are somehow in 10th after losing every game. Like, to some teams who need to build, who know they have, whose aspirations are, not currently within reach, like, losing games is going to be more important than getting that one or two extra road games, by the way. Like you don't even get home revenue from it. It's road games. Now, I think the counter to that is, like, look at the West, look at Phoenix fighting, look at the young Blazers, who are, like, sort of the team, my heroes of the year are almost the Portland Trail Blazers, because they are actually incentivized to, punt on this season, and they're not. But a team like the Suns, of course, they're trying to make the play-in. There's nothing for them to gain from finishing 11th. They don't have their picks anyway.
Yeah.
You just don't want your fans thinking the result of a game is either meaningless or it could be potentially harmful if you win, because then you're devaluing the individual units of your product. And I think over time that becomes corrosive to growing the game. Obviously, the league is doing fine. They have a nice, rich TV deal. But if you get more micro about that, you get more insular into it, you'll realize that these games that, even if they're being competed, even if the players are competing super hard, if the organizations don't really care about them, then the fans are going to see that. And, for every fan base that bounces back once they become good, maybe there are some that, just tune out and in a world of many, many distractions, don't tune back in.
Yeah, not every fan base is the Utah Jazz, which I learned through your article, have had sellouts regardless of what's going on with their season and regardless of the product and the people that are out on the court. So shout out to the Utah Jazz for setting that standard, but not every fan base is like that. So before I let you go, I got to ask you, if Adam Silver throws you into a room and says, listen, we've seen March, we know it's bad, fix it for us, what's your solution?
The first thing they have to do is stop incentivizing losing. There are still better odds and a lower floor you can fall to the worse you are. So they've got to stop doing that. My dream scenario is you take the 14 teams that don't make the playoffs and the 8 teams that lose in the first round, shake them in a big bucket, pull them out 1-22 at the end of the year. That might be extreme for some. I wouldn't mind it.
Okay.
But any amount you can flatten the odds, it's obviously going to help. The other thing is shortening the season. That would account for a lot of the players on the other end, the better teams. It would hopefully increase their availability. And when they do get injured, it would limit the number of games that they miss because you're not playing as frequently. There are about 16, 15 back-to-backs for each team. If you could get close to eliminating those, move it to a 70-game season, something like that over the same time span, I don't think that fixes it entirely, but I think it does make a meaningful difference, especially later in the season, in March, if you will.
Definitely in March. And I'm sure there were a lot of athletes that probably agree with you, especially on that second point of shortening the season. The injuries tend to pile up closer to playoffs. So thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate you breaking down this article, breaking down the context of it, because I know a lot of people have had March basketball in their minds and not the fun collegiate side of it. This NBA mugginess on the way to the playoffs. So you guys go read Eric Koreen over at The Athletic. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Law Murray for joining me earlier. And thank you all for waking up with us. Until next time.